What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes, and today I'm going to be taking a look at Legendary Sigurd, going to be giving you guys my analysis on him and what kind of builds you can run, and I'll also talk about the other units on this banner as well as rating them for their performance and for fodder potential. So hope you all do enjoy this kind of video. It does take quite a bit of time to make, so I would really appreciate if you could leave a like and subscribe. And with that said, let us begin. So today we got a FEH channel out of nowhere, and there we saw Legendary Sigurd as a wind legendary unit. So he's a sword cavalier, and he is definitely a very powerful unit. We already know his stats from FEH channel, and they've also shown his preferred skills. So Legendary Sigurd is easily one of the best cavaliers in the entire game because of his two preferred skills. So Hallowed Tyrfing gives you -1 special cooldown, which means that his Holy Knight aura is a one-turn special, and at start of combat if foe's HP is above 75%, then he can get +5 to all of his stats, and he makes a guaranteed follow-up attack. So this gives him really amazing mixed phase potential, and his secondary effect, which is damage reduction, is always going to be active in the player phase, and it's only going to be active in the enemy phase when you're facing against any kind of ranged unit. So in both of those instances, you're going to be reducing the damage from foe's first hit by 40%, and that's a huge thing. As we have seen on normal Sigurd, his Divine Tyrfing Refine was really good, and this Sigurd is basically a better Sigurd, and he also dunks on his son, Legendary Selef, because they both have pretty identical stat line, but of course, Legendary Sigurd is much better. So this weapon gives him mixed phase potential and also gives him damage reduction. The fact that he can get the damage reduction in the player phase means that he's a very annoying unit to face in arena, ether raids, or anywhere, which means that he can just take the hit that comes from the retaliation and then trigger his special and do quite a lot of damage. And his special is a big part of the reason why he's so good. So Holy Knight Aura is a 2-turn special and becomes 1 turn because of his weapon. So the special pretty much gives you a skill extra movement, and it doesn't really stack with other movement boosting skills, of course. And it does special damage 25% of his attack stat. So it's pretty much like a mini draconic aura, and that is pretty good seeing his high attack stat. He's probably gonna have a attack super boon as well. And after combat, if he triggered his special, then he can give +6 attack to himself and all of his allies for 1 turn. So this is global buff. It doesn't really matter where the allies are. They will all get +6 attack. And then he can also get +1 movement and also to all of his allies. And it doesn't really matter what kind of unit they are. Even range cavalry units like we have seen here, Legendary Leaf gets +1 movement. So that is just very insane. You don't want him to trigger his special, otherwise hell is gonna break loose, and that's why he's gonna be a very annoying unit to face in ether raids offense, because people are gonna be using him with dual lift and all of these other cavalry, range cavalry units, which are just gonna be having their movement increased, which means that it's gonna be really threatening. Same goes for arena. In arena, you have even less options. Most people cannot really run dancers or stuff like that. So if you do not kill Sigurd and if he triggers a special, then the next thing you know, a dual lift is coming at you and attacking you, and then getting danced by duo Sigurd. So a lot of degenerate stuff can be opened up by this special, and the special can easily be pre-charged with quick and pulse, of course, so it can be triggered pretty easily. If Legendary Claude's Fallen Star is any kind of indication, which triggers even if Claude dies, then Holy Knight Aura is still going to be giving the allies the movement buff and the attack buff, even if Sigurd dies. As long as he triggered his special in combat, that is going to be all that he needs to give the support to his allies. That is what I'm assuming. I could be wrong, but I think it's probably gonna work like that. If it doesn't, then it of course means that you want to use stuff with guard to prevent him from triggering his special, and just make sure that he doesn't trigger that, so that his allies do not really get that movement buff. And he's basically a 4 movement cavalry unit, which is pretty insane, and it pretty much makes his threat range similar to a range cavalry unit. And Fey maps are really small. They are not really as big as FE4, of course. So this kind of 4 movement is pretty insane, and more so on range cavalry units, which might be on his team as his allies. So definitely have to watch out for Legendary Sigurd when playing against him. But of course, he does have his weaknesses. The fact that not follow-up can shut down his weapon is really good, and stuff like dual lift and Young Innis can just break through his damage reduction. And that's why in my Young Innis review, I just focused on a lot of builds with time pulse and a 2-turn special, because you really need a pre-charge special to break through Hallowed Tyrfing, and it really helps with stuff like that. So Young Innes, again, is going to be a pretty good unit that you could use in Arena Assault against Sigurd. And his resistance isn't the highest, which means that you can definitely use AoE specials like with Ophelia, Legendary Lilina, and they'll be able to roast him. So AoE specials are not really reduced by his damage reduction. Keep in mind that Hallowed Tyrfing only gives him the damage reduction against ranged units. So you can still attack him with melee units and do full damage, and he's not going to get any kind of damage reduction. So you can pretty much use that. But baiting him out and tanking him is going to be the most annoying part. And the fact that his bulk is actually not that bad. He's definitely really bulky on the defensive side. But still, he's deceptively bulky against a lot of the magical threats, even despite his resistance, which is actually not that bad and does work out. And his weapon does give him extra resistance. We have seen attack defense catch on him, so this is pretty much going to be a mixed phase skill, and he can easily get +7 to his attack and defense if the foe is at full HP, or if any kind of penalty is active on the foe. And if both of the conditions are met, then he essentially gets +9 attack and defense. Fatal Smoke does count as a penalty, and Fatal Smoke is just a very toxic skill when you're against it, because you can not really heal up any kind of HP even during the combat, so that is pretty annoying. And Fatal Smoke is going to be activating attack defense catch, so it does have pretty good synergy overall. And we have seen Crusader's Ward on normal Sigurd, so this kind of skill can be really good when you're not running distant counter on him, because you can pretty much reduce the damage from foe's second hit by 80%. And then Hallowed Tyrfing always reduces damage from ranged units by 40%. So the damage reduction is really going to be annoying if you're going to be coming at him with any kind of ranged unit. So he can be really bulky with that. But of course, this slot B skill should not be used if you're using distant counter. The slot B skill also means that Legendary Sigurd is pretty much like a 190 BST scoring unit, because it's a 300 SP slot B skill. So you just have to run a 300 SP slot C skill as well, and on slot A, and you pretty much get a 190 BST unit. His BST is of course not that high, but he acts like one because of this exclusive slot B skill, so that is really good for arena scoring. So Legendary Sigurd is an easy 10 out of 10, very good unit. Holy Knight Aura is just amazing, giving him the extra movement and also supporting his allies. And the support oriented part is always really good because it will age better. And Hallowed Tyrfing is also a really amazing weapon that gives him mixed phase utility because of giving him the auto follow up. But that of course means that null follow up is going to be having a pretty good value against him, because you can just stop his auto follow up, which can a lot of time mean that he's not going to be triggering his Holy Knight Aura special. And now let's talk about what kind of skills you want to run on him. His base kit is pretty good, so for the most part it's going to be helping you, but if you want to invest a bit more into him, then I would definitely suggest using Distant Foil, because it doesn't really conflict with Crusader's Ward like Distant Counter. So you can still run Distant Foil and destroy a lot of the bow and dagger units and still get the damage reduction against the magical units. But of course I would prefer Distant Counter on him, because he definitely has a damage reduction and he does get extra stats from his weapon to take care of a lot of the mage threats. So with Distant Counter, you do not want to run Crusader's Ward. It does have anti-synergy, so lull attack defense goes really well. And in Aether Raid's defense, if you're going to be using him, then ARD attack defense is extremely good, because he's going to be so tanky. And being tanky on the defensive side matters a lot in Aether Raid's defense, because most of the attackers are going to be physically based. So these two skills, Crusader's Ward and lull attack defense, are going to be really good. But let's talk about his potential with like near trace skills, which we have recently seen on the Childhood Encounter banner. We of course do not have attack defense near trace, but I'm still trying to future-proof my video. It's probably going to happen eventually. If you can give him Tana's skill, but he doesn't really make too much use of the speed debuff, so it's a bit questionable, but still his potential with near trace is really good, because he has got 4 movement, which is really amazing. And with other allies who have got near trace or far trace skills, they also become really good users of them, because Holy Knight Aura boosts their movement by 1. So Legendary Sigurd ends up being a really good hit and run unit, because he can just use his 4 movement really productively. And keep in mind that near trace gives you Canto plus 1 remaining movement, so that is extremely amazing on someone like him, and that is something that you could consider eventually when this skill does come out. It does give you the in combat debuff as well, so it's pretty good overall. Of course, Crusader's Ward is a preferred skill, but there are other good options like these two in my opinion. And time will tell how he's going to be shaping up to be with that attack defense near trace whenever that comes out. And Fatal Smoke is going to be a pretty good skill if you're running attack defense catch. And in general, this is a very good skill in Aether Raid's defense, because you just stop the opponent's healing which is of course really toxic to face. You can also run Attack Smoke if you're not going to be running Fatal Smoke. And in Arena, you always have to run a 300 SP Slotsy skill because like I explained, he can pretty much score as a 190 BST unit if you run 300 SP Slot A and Slotsy skill because of Crusader's Ward. So Joint Drive attack is really good. And for his Sacred Seal, Attack Defense solo is again really good mixed phase option. Attack Rest solo is also going to be pretty good whenever it comes out and if you're running Distant Counter. And Mystic Boost does give him the self healing, so that's again a very good option because you cannot really run any kind of healing special on him. And Quicken Pulse just pre-charges his Holy Knight aura, which is already at 1 cooldown thanks to Hallowed Tyrfing. So making a pre-charge means that you're guaranteed going to be giving your allies the movement buff, which is really important in many situations. Quick Riposte might seem a bit odd with Hallowed Tyrfing, but keep in mind that if you're going to be facing opponents who have impact skills, then you can pretty much use the Quick Riposte Sacred Seal and his auto follow-up to break through them. So if you want to break through a lot of the impact effects, then Quick Riposte is definitely going to be a pretty good option. And then finally, if you want to be evil and just annoy the heck out of Ninja Lin and Legendary Leaf users, then you can run Deflect Missile because he gets the 40% damage reduction from his weapon, and then Deflect Missile is going to be giving him even more damage reduction. So his builds are pretty flexible. You can definitely invest into him a bit more. He does come with a pretty good base kit, but there is still potential if you want to invest a bit more into him. I would definitely recommend having Distant Counter or Distant Foil if you can afford it, and if you're going to be using him a lot. You can still use Distant Foil and Crusader's Ward in something like Arena, which is really good. And as it is, we have got a lot of Aether Raid's defense teams which are focused on initiating turn 1, and with those kinds of teams, Legendary Sigurd seems like a really big threat. At least he can only be used in the win season when it's going to be overlapping with AR, so that's the silver lining, I guess. He's not going to be a constant thing that you're going to be seeing, but in Arena he's definitely going to be much more common, and he's definitely a very strong wind legendary unit. Pretty much the best one, I would say, because the only ones that we have are like Legendary Chrom and Legendary Eliwood, the pair up legendary units that I'm talking about. So he seems like easily the best unit out of that. So he's a pretty good unit, and his fodder is also quite decent. Attack Defense Catch is definitely going to be the main skill. Fatal Smoke is also an option, but it's definitely a lot more niche. There are not many situations where we really need Fatal Smoke. I would say that its best application is probably on someone like Kronia, who can just ignore the healing towers and still be a very strong unit. It's a bit annoying that you cannot inherit the Cat skill and Fatal Smoke at the same time, but still pretty good fodder with a new skill. And now let's talk about the other units from this banner. So even though we don't have the trailer, we still know who are going to be on it from the announcement board. So let us begin, and he's going to be color sharing with Mirabilis and also Legendary Lilina, so that is really good. And Legendary Lilina is going to be a very strong mage cavalry unit who of course appreciates the movement buff from Legendary Sigurd of course, but on her own she's a very strong unit. Having that AoE special is really good, and you can always run stuff like Life and Death and Fury if you want to make sure you do more damage with her AoE special, because AoE specials only work on the visible attack stat. Pulse Smoke is going to be having a lot of value for Aether Raid's offense, and you can inherit that and Attack Rest Solo 4 at the same time if you did get Young Leon, so that improves her fodder potential in my opinion if you did get Young Leon. So you can fodder him for Attack Rest Solo 3 and then inherit Pulse Smoke and Attack Rest Solo 4 at the same time from Legendary Lilina. Definitely a really good unit to be color sharing with Legendary Sigurd. Mirabilis is pretty much going to be the best anima mythic because she's a dancer and she's also a mythic unit, and her Whimsical Dream is a really good dance that can debuff the enemy's team and also buff up your own team. Flower of Ease is also a really good support weapon, and overall she's gonna be a staple on any kind of anima defense team. So if you don't really have her, then you can definitely try to go for her. But if you already have her, then merges don't really do that much for Aether Raid's defense mythic units in my opinion. Merges matter more on Aether Raid's offense mythics than the defense mythics, but still she does have pretty decent fodder in Folder's defense res, which you can inherit at the same time either with defense res cap or sabotage defense. Both of these skills are alright, and I feel like sabotage defense is probably going to be available on a Grail unit at some point. Defense res cap is a pretty good skill that is useful for global support, so that's an option, but that's also available in the Divine Code section. Blue color is pretty stacked on this banner because we have Legedary Chrom here as well, and he's definitely a menace to the society of Fire Emblem Heroes. He's a very oppressive unit with his preferred weapon and his assist to change fate, and he can get extremely bulky with his weapon and a loud skill in slot B, and also he has got the armor effective damage. and when the opponent is at full HP, then he can just neutralize any kind of debuffs on himself. So that's a very powerful weapon. And even outside of combat, he can support your team with 2 Change Fate, which is a really good assist skill, and that can just help you a lot without even wasting his own action, because he can still attack after using 2 Change Fate. So that's very powerful. So he can be run in 2 ways. Either you just invest into his defense and bulk, or if you're investing into him heavily, then you can go with a plus speed IV and go with a lot of the skills which can boost up his speed. Now it might seem like a meme, but honestly, Speedy Chrom, if you have faced him in Arena or Arena Assault, is going to be a big threat. The point of Speedy Chrom is not to outspeed units, but basically deny follow-ups from many of the units who are going to be faster than him, and that allows him to be a really annoying threat because he just hits so hard, and then he cannot even get doubled if he's running that kind of build. So extremely good 10 out of 10 unit, and his fodder is also extremely good. You can inherit close counter and lull attack defense at the same time, which is absolutely amazing. Seiros has been present on a Hero Rises banner, and just like Mirabilis, she's going to be a staple on any kind of anima defense team because she is a 7 slot mythic unit basically, and she can open up the 7th slot. So overall as a unit, she's pretty good herself. Aurora Breath is a really good weapon, giving her the extra stats depending on which kind of phase she's fighting. So in the player phase she can get the extra attack, and in the enemy phase she gets the bulk and denies follow-ups from the enemies. So that's very powerful considering the fact that she's got Dragon Wall and an impact skill in her base kit. Still, she's a melee range unit, but she can pose as a pretty decent amount of threat because of her auto follow-up from her weapon and the fact that she can stop up follow-up attacks of her enemies. Null follow-up and the fact that Naga can provide you the Divine Fang buff is going to be 2 of her main weaknesses, and she's pretty much the reason why Naga has aged a bit better, because Divine Fang is kind of useful when you have such a bulky unit like Seiros pretty much every single match in Aether Raid's offense. So as for fodder, she does have pretty good fodder in Mirror Impact and Dragon Wall, but not a lot of dragons really need both of these skills at the same time. The Dragon Wall skill is basically the main skill that she's going to be foddered off for, and damage reduction on dragon units is extremely good when it's resistance based. So good unit with good fodder, and if you already have her for your defense team, then like I said, merges don't really matter too much on the defense mythics, so she can be foddered off for Dragon Wall. This is definitely a bit of a guess, but I think that Selena is going to be on this banner. Ducil was present on the last mythic banner, so I think Selena does make sense. So hopefully I'm not wrong. So Selena is a very strong blue cavalry mage, and she definitely separates herself from Reinhardt because Tome of Storms has got null follow-up built into it, and that's extremely good. That gives her a niche which not a lot of cavalry units have. And cavalry units cannot really get null follow-up naturally, so that allows Selena to pretty much run something like Windsweep and be a pretty good unit, and she can still double through the Windsweep thanks to the null follow-up built into her weapon. So she's a really strong offensive mage cavalry unit with that null follow-up in her weapon, and her fodder is also really good. You can inherit Life and Death 4 and the Ruse skill at the same time, or even the Dual Rally skill if you want to. She's the only unit in the game as of making this video who has got Attack Res Ruse, so she does have pretty good fodder with some rare skills. And then we move on to the green color. It has some pretty nice mages this time around. We do have Legendary Celica, who does have Soul of Sophia and can cut through the resistance similar to her husband, who can cut through the defense of the enemies. So she can definitely work better against a lot of the mage tanks who have got high resistance. And Soul of Sophia has got null follow-up built into it, and that improves her matchups against a lot of the units who have follow-up negation skills. Brave Hector mainly, who is a blue colored unit, but still you have to watch out for a bonfire retaliation from Brave Hectors many times, and that's why Sturdy Impact or Fury 4 can be a pretty good option to increase her bulk. Soul of Sophia is going to be a very nice thing because it has got Desperation, which a frail unit like her definitely needs, and Null Follow-Up, which is absolutely amazing. Her fodder is kind of decent. She does have Swiss Sparrow 3, but it's present in the Divine Code section as it is. And Attack Speed Oath is also something you could inherit at the same time, but honestly, self-buffing skills are probably going to be happening on the Grail units eventually. So she doesn't really have the most rare skills essentially, but still has some useful stuff. Thrasir is a pretty powerful green mage with her preferred weapon and her killing intent, which pretty much gives her a conditional desperation effect and also a lot of debuffs, and activating her skills is really easy because you can easily support her with teammates who can have debuffs, and in case of the anima season there is Mirabilis with Whimsical Dream, so it isn't really hardest to trigger her stuff, and she also has the effective damage in her weapon, which means that she's got pretty good matchup against Naga, which is always going to be helpful if you're going to be using her. Her fodder is decent because Flashing Blade 4 and Panic Smoke can be inherited at the same time if you do fodder off a young Ilger. Panic Smoke can mostly be useful in Aether Raid's defense where offensive players are going to be running buffs on their units, so Panic Smoke does find its usage there, and Flashing Blade 4 can be a pretty good option on a lot of the fast units who want true damage and also special acceleration. So overall, a really good unit and a good fodder, and color sharing with Celica is definitely really good. I think the third unit on the green pool is probably going to be Asbel, because we did get Sarah in the Mythic banner last month, so Asbel again does make sense from that same batch. And Asbel is a pretty good green mage, but the thing is that he faces insane amount of competition. Graph Caliber is a good weapon, giving him the -1 special cooldown, effective damage against flyers, a lot of stats, and also the buff nullification on the enemy. So he doesn't really have to run the lull skills because he already just ignores any kind of visible buffs of the enemies. Despite that, he faces competition from Luin, Thrasir, Legendary Celica, both of them are present on this banner, and also Luin, who has got an extremely good weapon refine. So Asbel is not really bad, but he does have quite a bit of competition. He can definitely be a bit more bulky than a lot of those units, and at max investment or higher investments, that can actually come into the play and actually help you. You've got Fury 4 and Null Follow-Up, which you can inherit at the same time. Null Follow-Up is especially extremely valuable, and the fact that you can also grab a tier 4 skill with it is just absolutely amazing and cherry on top. Null Follow-Up is pretty useful in the metagame where we have a lot of cheating units with auto follow-up and follow-up negation skills, so its fodder is extremely good and gonna be quite universally useful. Eir is still a very good light mythic, and she was the first one, but she has still aged really well. She's of course no Peony. Peony is going to be better, and Milad can have the isolation effect, but still Eir can hold on her own and provide support to your team and even function really well as a unit. So being a range flying unit means that she's got really good mobility, and the fact that she can run Disarm Trap means that she can easily destroy structures in Aether Raids without caring about any kind of traps, and her mobility helps quite a lot. And Disarm Trap also means that you can run Fury on her slot A and basically make her as a Gale Force initiator, because within 2 rounds of combat with Lifia Burke and Fury, she can fall into the Wings of Mercy range of her allies, so definitely a pretty flexible unit. And you can also run Temari Plus on her and run Phantom Resistance, so she can just support your team with the debuffs as well. So pretty versatile unit, and she has aged quite well. Unfortunately, her fodder has not aged very well because Mystic Boost is present as a Sacred Seal, and Slot B is extremely competitive. So there's really not much of a reason to run Mystic Boost a lot of times on most of the units, unless of course you're some kind of range flying unit or the flying units who don't have access to many slot B skills. So Mystic Boost isn't really gonna be that desirable on slot B for most units. Duma, aka the Upheaval Man, aka the Walking Catapult, is a pretty decent unit in Aether Raid's defense because of his upheaval, because he can destroy structures, and most of the time he's going to be used in lane 3 or lane 4 with a combination of a catapult that is max level, so you can destroy 2 of the enemy's structures, which can be very important to their playstyle many of the times, like Healing Tower or Bold Tower. Still, having this kind of niche and utility of being a walking catapult is always going to be aging to be really good, and he can pretty much function easily as a Wings of Mercy unit because he can hit pretty hard actually with Death Blow or Attack Defense Bond, and he can even run Distant Counter Vantage, which could be annoying in many times. So overall a decent dragon. He does have his niche. Doesn't have too much for fodder though, because Bold Fighter is already available on so many armor units. It's even present in the Divine Code section, and it's not really all that expensive to get. Defense Rest Solo is a skill that you could run on some kind of tank, but generally speaking it's not going to be the best solo skill that most units use, so his fodder potential isn't really quite there. We literally do not have too many colorless units to be run on this banner. Sarah was run last time, so pretty much only Louise is left, and she's a very recent unit, so I think they're gonna go back to the older colorless units. So it could be Julian, Shinon, or even Brave Camilla. I think it's probably gonna be Julian because it does add value to the colorless pool. So Julian has got pretty good stat spread overall, but still he's facing competition from the other dagger units like Layla and of course Ninja Lin, who are extremely powerful. And there are of course easily mergeable dagger units that are present in the 3-star 4-star pool. Stuff like Soth, who's also in due for a weapon refine. Julian has got high defense but doesn't have much of a resistance, so that's mainly going to be his downfall. He can function with a lot of the weapons like his default weapon, Courtly Fan, Ouch Pouch, or even the Broadleaf Fan, which is pretty much going to be his best weapon seeing his attack stat. So he can be a decent unit, and he's actually a really good fodder because he can inherit Close Foil and lull attack speed at the same time. So a top tier fodder if he ends up being on this banner, which I think he might. So most of the units we do already know, but these are the 3 units, Selena, Julian, and Asbel, which I'm kinda guessing, seeing as the pattern. Sigurd sharing colors with Lilina and Mirabilis is definitely really good, and blue pool is also quite stacked. And keep in mind that we can actually get a Fallen banner next month, so if you're on the lookout for that and if you really like Fallen units, then it might be worth waiting for. There are also Hero Fest Choose Your Legends banner this time around, so you might want to pull on them as well, and we do get tickets too. So there's definitely some other banners which you could consider if you're not really trying to pull for him, because these legendary banners can definitely be a gamble and it doesn't really have a spark. So it isn't really guaranteed that how many hundreds of orbs it might need to pull Legendary Sigurd. He's of course a really good unit, but that's always good to keep in mind. So hope you all enjoyed this video. Make sure to share this video with your friends who are pulling on this banner. And if you enjoyed, then please be sure to leave a like and a comment, helps me tremendously. And be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Sigurd's damage reduction against young Innis. So that's it, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.